There was once this man who had black and white cattle, and he loved his cattle so much that he treated them like his own children. And every morning he would go out to milk his black and white cattle, and they would give him white frothy milk. So one morning he goes out to milk his black and white cattle. There's no milk. He said, well, that's strange. Next morning he goes out to milk his black and white cattle. Again, no milk. So he says, you know, something is wrong here. And he moves his cattle to a place where the grass is greener, thinking, that'll solve the problem. Third morning, he goes out to milk his black and white cattle. Again, no milk. So he says, you know, something is really wrong here. I'm going to stay up all night until I can see what it is. And that's what he did. And in the wee hours of the morning, he saw the most amazing sight. It was still dark, but he saw the heavens open. And down from the heavens came this huge rope. And climbing down the rope were the most amazing women he'd ever seen. And they were carrying calabashes. And they went over to his black and white cattle and they milked the white frothy milk. Well, the man didn't care about the milk. These women were the most amazing women he'd ever seen. So he ran towards them and he grabbed one. She shrieked. Calabashes' milk went flying all over the place as the rest of the women scurried up the rope into the heavens. He held on tight to her. And the tighter he held, the more she fought. And the more she fought, the tighter he held, until he said, woman, I want to marry you. She stopped fighting. She said, well, all right. I'll marry you under one condition. He said, well, what's that? She goes, well, I have this basket that is so exquisitely woven, the lid fits perfectly on the bottom. I'll agree to marry you if you agree not to open the basket until I say so. He said, is that it? So they were married. And she was a very good wife. And she loved his black and white cattle and treated them as though they were her own children. Well, one morning, she was out milking the black and white cattle, and he was sitting around the house. And his eyes went up to the top shelf where the basket was. And he said, you know, we've been married a long time now. All of what is mine is hers. Surely what is hers is mine. Probably won't do any harm to take a peek at that basket now. So he got up. And he took the basket down from the shelf and he put it on his lap. And very carefully, he lifted the lid that fit perfectly on the bottom and he peeked inside. He said, I can't believe she's made such a big deal out of this. There's nothing here. He put the lid back on the bottom, put the basket back up on the shelf. So when his wife came home, she said, so, husband, what have you been doing? And he said, I looked in the basket. You looked in the basket? Yeah, I can't believe you made such a big deal out of this. You looked in the basket. And what did you see? Nothing. There was nothing there. You looked in the basket and you saw nothing. If only you would have waited, I would have shown you how to see what was in the basket. Now I must take my basket and leave. She left him. And the old Kikuyu storyteller says, mankind still thinks those things of the spirit which cannot be seen are nothing. Now I tell this story because for those of us who work in the field of eating disorders, we understand there are invisible forces at work. And it takes a skill, it takes learning. How do you see them? How do you find them? What are they? I believe they are things like instincts, emotions, intuitions. But how can you see these forces that's driving disordered eating because they're invisible? They can't be seen by these eyes. But they can be seen by your inner eyes. You can listen with your inner ear. And how do you get to that? Because basically what I understand is that there's a language being spoken through the eating disorder. It's the language of metaphor. So what I was doing in telling you the story is I'm starting yakking to you in metaphor. You're creating images in your own mind's eye and of invisible things. And your rope is different from your rope. From your rope, it's your rope. And so he begins the process of using the language of metaphor, the faculty of imagination, to begin the recovery process.